There are a few jugglers that meet up at a park in Jacksonville on Saturdays, and on the rare occasion that I'm able to take the afternoon off, I head down there to join them. Such was the case last Saturday. We had gorgeous weather. It was partly cloudy, temperatures in the mid-70s, so it was just a perfect day to hang out in the park. And that meant, of course, a bit of a crowd. So we spent less time practicing and teaching each other new tricks than we spent showing off for families walking by and teaching random strangers the basic three-ball pattern. Now, this park, there's a circular track that goes all around it, and we're set up at sort of the south end of the circle. And about half an hour after we got there, we see a group of guys starting to mill around at the western end. And it's immediately obvious that they're there for some religious shit. It's all young African-American men, and they're all wearing these robes over their clothes, like black robes like you would graduate in. And as more and more of them start to congregate out there, they start setting out these signs and pamphlets and shit on the ground around them. Now, we're not talking about a very big park here, right? So we're close enough that we can see everything that they're doing, but far enough away that when they start loudly preaching, we can't make out the words. But of course, ultimately, inevitably, that's what they do. In all, there's maybe 30, 35 of them, and they're all standing like facing the same way, arranged like a choir. And they're taking turns preaching. One of them will yell talk for a bit, and when he starts to flag, another one of them will randomly take over. Now, again, I couldn't make out what they were saying, but from their tone of voice and their gesticulations, I was pretty sure it was hellfire. And when Lucinda and I walked past them on our way to the car, some 2.5 hours after they started their weird little vigil, I confirmed it. They were screaming about the apocalypse, and they had these little placards strewn around them with Bible verses from Daniel, Ezekiel, and Revelation. And they were warning all the people that walked by about the inevitability of the end of days. And that made me so fucking sad. Because look, if you've ever tried to get a group of young men to all show up at the same time to do any goddamn thing, literally anything, a fucking sport, a social event, a D&D game, you know what a Herculean effort it had to be to get like 35 guys in their early 20s to all come to this park and sacrifice their Saturday afternoon for this. Hell, they were even all dressed the same. This is a monumental feat of organization here. And for what? Think about the good these 30 kids could have been doing. I mean, it's hard to imagine anything less productive than screaming at strangers that aren't listening to you about a fiction you barely understand. I mean, the fiction is actively harmful in this instance, so even just sleeping in and playing video games would have been better than what they were actually doing. But even setting that aside, it was the absolute nadir of productivity. Right? Like, even imagine a world where they're right. Right, that we really are on the verge of a biblical apocalypse that God encoded into his Bible in such a way that nobody fucking noticed it until the 1800s, and that all the people who remain unconvinced will all suffer through this grand tribulation while the chosen few are given a fast pass to heaven everlasting. Even if that were true, they would be entirely wasting their time. Because A, nobody was listening to them, and B, everybody walking by had already heard that bullshit before. Right? Hell, if their vitriol and anger is turning people away from their message, they're being counterproductive. And before you start thinking I'm casting stones from a vitriolic and angry glass house, I want to remind you, I'm not screaming this diatribe into a public park. Right? And critically, we're not in a world where any of this shit they're saying is right. Right? That's a fantasy I can barely keep up for a few theoretical minutes in my diatribe to make a point. So the only actual good thing they're doing is turning people off of their dangerous message by being belligerent assholes about it. But just imagine if instead of gathering to lord their superiority over the unclean masses and condemn them for their sinful ways, these guys had decided to spend their Saturday helping the city's unhoused, or tutoring kids, or cleaning up a highway, or fucking sewing little sweaters for ducks, or arguing about the taxonomy of unicorns. Hell, me and those jugglers were doing more good just by making kids smile and teaching people an active hobby that like 1 in 400 of them will ever learn to do. As Madalyn Murray O'Hair, the founder of American Atheists, famously said, 2 hands working can do more than 1,000 clasped in prayer. It's probably more quotable than my version. 2 hands up your ass are more useful than 2 hands in prayer, but it isn't any more accurate. As Madalyn Murray O'Hair put it, 2 hands working can do more than 1,000 clasped in prayer. And that's probably more quotable than my version. 2 hands up your ass are more useful than 2 hands in prayer, but it's not any more accurate.